that one had, maybe a little variation, and I took everything away of that structure except for this form right here. So this was the second painting. This is the third in the series. So you see a little bit more of that, you see that same compositional structure? And actually, in this painting here, this was very difficult to complete because I put such a strong form in the middle of this field. And to finish it, I put that mark in and this mark in, and then it seemed to hold together as a composition. This was the third one. I think this was the fourth. Same process. I think all that you can see of that compositional structure is probably this line right here. So I'm putting down a structure and I'm eradicating it, I'm taking it away, I'm taking it away, I'm taking it away, but I'm allowing a trace to show. So part of this is allowing the artist's hand to show. Somewhere I want you to see the process. And part of it is, after the pandemic, I had this sense that I wanted everything to calm down. That I felt like after civil unrest and global pandemic, it kind of forced me, and I think a lot of us, to clarify our priorities. And so I wanted the work to be pretty minimal and calm. What I wasn't conscious of, that's the embodiment part, is, yeah, the color's calm, there's a minimal sense to the canvas, but if you look really close, have you guys looked close? This surface is not calm at all, it's very activated. So the knowledge that I had and the emotions that I had from that time period, despite the wish for a calm series, there was a lot of activity on the surface. I think maybe the next painting was the one, oh, this was probably next. And again, you see the traces, you see the history. And part of that is, I think, also me as a psychologist, the idea that our history is always there with us. So there's the history of that compositional structure. But unless you look really closely and you know that story, it's not going to show. And then maybe that one with a lot of color right here was the next. So does that give you a little sense of the chronology? Okay, who else has a question? Cicely.
Yes, hello.
Okay. Hello.
I see that the exhibition also has a literary component to
Yes.
it, with some amazing poetry. I was wondering which came first. Did you read the poem first and then it go to the art feeling, or vice versa?
Okay. That's a good question. Okay. I had a show in a museum in 2022. And I really wanted poetry to be part of the exhibition. So the curator invited 7 Vermont poets to compose original poems to my paintings. Unbelievable honor, and the poetry was beautiful. One of the poets who had organized the other poets was James Cruz, and I loved his poetry. So the paintings were complete, but I asked him if he would send me 10 to 15 of his poems, and I could pick 3 that I thought would pair with the exhibit. I have a question for you all. Who in here thinks in pictures? Who in here thinks in words? Okay. I think that sometimes having poetry as part of an exhibition deepens the experience. It allows people who think in words to initially connect with the written language. And it pairs and can deepen the experience of seeing the visual imagery. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anyone else? Who else has a question? Or a comment? Observation? No one. Yep. Anything that you want to ask me as an artist that you've sort of wondered about in artistic practice or having a career as an artist?
I just wondered how you started the whole thing. You said you took classes, and then what was the process? What did you do?
Okay. I think this, can you guys hear me? Yeah. I don't know if it's working or not. Hello? Okay, we can put it down. Oh, okay. I took classes my whole life, art classes. And I studied with a woman named Dorothy Young for about 15 years in a very small class in Highland Park. She was an abstract expressionist, a Chinese-American, amazing abstract expressionist artist. So that was where I started. When I really decided that I wanted to seriously become a professional artist, I took classes all over, in Europe, at the School of Visual Arts in New York, at the Center of Visual Arts in Summit. And one little story is, it took me years before I called myself an artist, because I just didn't feel like I had a right to say that I was an artist. And at the School of Visual Arts, William Zimmer was the juror. He was a critic for the New York Times, an art critic. He was the juror for a particular exhibition, and he awarded me a prize. And it was after that I felt like I could say, okay, I am an artist. That was a long time ago, but it really took me a long time. So what I didn't tell any of you except Midori is that I am in graduate school right now. So even though I have my doctorate in psychology, I'm getting my MFA in painting in Boston at the school, at Mass Art. So I'm probably the oldest graduate student. And again, I'm sharing this with you so that you kind of have in the back of your mind, your life is long. There are many things that you can do in the course of your life. Okay, did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Certainly a question you want to ask, a comment? Yeah.
I know that you said that the pink sometimes represents skin color or organs, but I did want to ask, do you often feel that your color choices are subconsciously influenced by your mood?
Yes and no.
Yes or no?
Okay, everyone heard?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I gravitate towards pinky tones, and in fact, right now I am fighting that impulse. So I have a mustard-colored painting that I didn't show you. I think that without my knowing it, there's been a preoccupation with the body. And some of it, at this stage of my life, is a preoccupation with the aging body. And because I'm Caucasian, you know, that's closest to my skin tone. But some of the choices are very conscious. I think in this painting, most of this just happened. You know, I wasn't sitting there saying, oh, maybe, you know, this complements that. I had a reaction, and I picked up a pigment stick or the brush and built the color choices. In this painting here, this was a very conscious decision. I thought the painting needed more contrast and something that would provide a sense of excitement that was different and created tension from everything else that sort of seemed to sit and complement each other. What else? Anything that you've always wanted to ask an artist?
How important is it, I don't know if this is working like we wanted to.
I have no idea.
How important is it, the connection between mental health and art, being a psychiatrist? I think that, I personally think that art has a strong mental health component, but you being the professional.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, so before I even answer that, I want to ask you all a question. How do you feel after you've been making your art? Just throw out an answer if you have one. You go into your studio, go into your classroom, you make something. What do you usually feel? Great. Relief. Relief, okay. Accomplished.
Relief.
Relief. Anyone else? I heard someone back here.
Oh, it's been energized.
Energized. Okay. I'll tell you a joke that my husband used to say. I'm married, and he said to me, "You are a better person after you're in the studio."
Unless it's a bad painting day.
Well, that's okay. Okay. So on one hand, there's a sense of relief and completion that can happen in making a painting. But also, it can be very frustrating, and there's a lot of moments of feeling uncertain, alone, lonely at times, scared, unsure. But in response to your question, I think that arts give people an outlet to put into visual language things that can't necessarily be expressed in verbal language. And I think that there is a relief and a release that comes from that. There's been some literature that I'm not that familiar with, but I know a little bit about, that art is used for geriatric patients as a way of helping people feel more connected with each other. Art is used with people who have developmental disabilities, and certainly art therapy. Okay, I have a specific example. As a psychologist, when I worked at Rutgers, I started eating disorder programs, and then in my practice, I used to see some women who had eating disorders. And these were people who were using their body as a canvas in a way. What they weren't able to express in verbal language, they expressed through their body. And so with some of those patients, we would sit on the floor and draw and use art because it enabled them to kind of bypass the part of them that didn't know in verbal language what they were feeling, but they could put it on a piece of paper and draw. Any other questions? Comments? Anything you want to ask?
Last one.
The last one. You can ask 5 more.
No, I won't. But when the period that you went to school to study psychology and to become a psychologist,
Yes.
and you were not practicing art, how did that impact you?
Okay. That was very hard for me. Most people who become psychologists or psychiatrists are in therapy themselves, because that's part of how you learn to become a therapist. And I can remember being in therapy and saying, I want to paint, I want to paint, I want to paint. I missed it dearly. And my therapist would kind of say to me, you're getting towards the end of the tunnel. There's light at the end of the tunnel. But even though I loved, and I was in graduate school for 6 years, that's a long time, I missed making art, but once I was done, I was able to get back to it. So that made a huge difference.
But artists need therapy, so
Go ahead.
I feel like artists can benefit from therapy quite a bit.
Yes.
And from personal experience, I would say it made me a better artist. So what would you say about that relationship? I mean, you're both in one, so it's...
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, and you don't have to answer because I know these are your students. Why do you think it made you a better artist, or how?
I think it's more about perspective.
Okay.
And it's kind of looking at yourself and your actions and your decisions from almost like outside of your own body.
Okay.
So you're looking at your work that way too, so you become a much better critic to your own paintings.
Okay.
And that's only part of it.
Okay.
But I don't think that microphone is working.
Oh, okay. Okay, so one part is you get a pair of binoculars and you can see the big picture a little better. Rather than being focused on, oh my God, this happened, you can kind of see what happened in your life in a larger point of view. I think that's one thing. It gives you perspective. Another thing is it can enable you to take risks. If you're someone who's afraid, I mean, being a painter, being an artist, involves taking a lot of risk. Anyone? I'm seeing some head nods. Do you want to say anything about that?
I don't know, in terms of trying new things when it comes to art, I feel like that could be a risk. Instead of
Yes.
trying new things.
Yes. Okay.
We're doing self-portraits right now, so it's the most vulnerable project.
Okay. Okay. So vulnerability, taking a risk to expose some part of yourself. Well, when you're in therapy, you're exposing parts of yourself in a safe, supportive environment. That strengthens your ability to be in the world a little bit more vulnerable. And it also strengthens your ability to judge when and where can I be vulnerable. That vulnerability and that risk-taking is something you can bring into your artwork. And hopefully you do bring into your artwork. I said that I'm in graduate school right now, and one of the things I was talking with some of the people about is, as a therapist, I'm taught to be neutral. A therapist doesn't share much about themselves because it's about the other person. But as an artist, I'm encouraged to be vulnerable, to make a self-portrait, to show something about my life in art. So there's a tension for me. This painting is about a friend of mine who died, who I loved, and I wanted to do a painting in honor of her. So as an artist, I can do that, but as a therapist, if I'm sitting with a patient, I'm not going to say to a patient, my friend just died. I'm really sad. So I think that's a personal tension that I struggle with, but I think taking risks, being vulnerable, therapy helps you do that. Therapy helps maybe, who in here sometimes has an internal critic that says, oh, that's a bad line, that's a bad color? Only two of us? Three? Okay. Most of us do. We have this, the demon inside our head that says, no, 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 bad art, bad color, bad mark. I think therapy helps you get that part in perspective, or else for me in the studio, music does it. If I always have music or a podcast on because it occupies the thinking part of my brain so I can be in the moment. So I think there's a lot of different ways that therapy can help us as artists and as human beings. So that's a great question. Any other questions, thoughts, moments? Yes.
What was the name of the book you mentioned before? I think it was Faux Pas.
Faux pas.
In Japanese.
Oh, Japanese, a book of Japanese fairy tales, and the particular story which I loved, and it's a well-known story, is The Boy Who Drew Cats. And I can't tell you the name of the author who collected the stories because the authorship has changed. But if you look up online, a book, I think it's called Japanese Fairy Tales. Or if you even look up The Boy Who Drew Cats, it will come up and it'll give you a source.
And who, I'm sorry to interrupt you, who wrote Faux Pas?
Okay, Amy Silman. And if you don't know Amy Silman's work, she's an amazing painter. Look her up online. And she shows in New York. She had a show this year. She'll probably have a show in the next year or two. Go to Chelsea and see it. She is an exciting painter. She brings art history in. Talk about taking risks. She'll take a painting. I mean, she writes and thinks about failure and how failure is really important as an artist in terms of taking risks, getting to the edge of failure. She'll take a painting, put it in the sink, and wash most of the paint off, and then start over. So that process of subtraction and addition, she takes it to an extreme and makes incredibly beautiful. Not beautiful, important work, because sometimes it's ugly, but it always references art history. FAUXPAS, FAUXPAS, Amy Silman. Anything else? Okay, I want to say thank you. This has been a real honor. If you want to stay in the gallery and look some more, please do. I've really enjoyed getting to know you all a little bit, and if there's anything you want to ask me, I'll be here for a little bit.
We want to just say,
Go ahead.
the galleries at Kane University, we appreciate you being here. We can just give Gail a round of applause. I think she exudes every form of education that, you know, we would like to have here, exhibited here at Kane University. And so we thank you for your time and your expertise and, you know, everything that you've shared with us here today, as well as this exhibition. And we look forward to your success, and we commend you for going back to school. I think that is amazing. And to just not stop, you know, and to show that life is best lived. And we commend you, and we appreciate you at the galleries at Kane. Our staff thinks you're amazing.
Aw.
And we thank you, Professor, and everyone that came out to share this moment with us. And we invite you to come back. Keep coming. We're going to have great talks. We're going to keep it going. So thank you, Professor. Thank you, everyone. If
Thank
there's no-
you. Thank you.
Like she says, to ask questions or
Yeah, if anyone wants to talk individually, I'll be here for a little bit.